2 hours after burying my 8-year-old son, my phone rang. The sound hit me like a fist. I froze on the edge of the sofa, staring at the floor, my hands trembling. I didn't know a single call could make the world tilt even further when I thought it had already fallen apart. The living room was silent except for the ticking clock on the mantel. Outside, the curtains moved softly in the evening breeze, brushing against the window like quiet fingers. I found something you need to see, a voice whispered on the other end. Please, come to the school. Don't tell anyone. Not your husband, not your family. It's urgent. My heart skipped, my stomach twisted. 2 hours ago, I had laid Samuel to rest. I thought the worst had already come. I thought nothing could hurt me more, but the fear in that voice made my chest tighten and my knees weak. What is it? I asked, my voice breaking, though I tried to sound calm. You have to see it yourself. Please, go now. Wait for me in the teacher's lounge. It's dangerous. Don't tell anyone. The line went quiet. I pressed the phone to my ear, staring at the swaying curtains, the ticking clock, the stillness that suddenly felt heavy. My grief was raw and sharp, but now it mixed with a new feeling, urgent fear I could not ignore. I had to know. I stood slowly, gripping the edge of the sofa to steady myself. My hands shook, but I forced each step. The faint scent of lilies from the funeral and damp earth clinging to Samuel's coat made my stomach churn. The room, once quiet, now seemed full of unseen danger. Trauma has a way of piercing even the most fragile, quiet moments. And in that instant, I realized my life was about to change again, before I even reached the school. I returned to the house after the call, but something felt off. The front door creaked behind me, and the living room smelled faintly of lilies and damp earth, still clinging to Samuel's coat. I thought I would find quiet, a moment to gather myself, but the sight that met my eyes made my chest tighten in a new kind of fear. Marcel, my husband, was standing by the window, speaking in low tones to a man I barely recognized. Their heads were close together, shoulders almost touching, and there was something in the way Marcel laughed, too soft, too easy, that made a cold knot form in my stomach. I couldn't hear the words clearly, but the tone, the familiarity, the intimacy. It set off a warning in me I had learned not to ignore. A teacup trembled on the table near my hand, vibrating slightly as if echoing the tension running through me. My fingers brushed it, and I realized my pulse was racing, my breath shallow. The room felt smaller somehow, the shadows longer. The faint evening light through the curtains fell on them in a way that made the scene feel unreal, like I was watching it from somewhere outside my body. I didn't move. I couldn't. Every instinct I had screamed that something was wrong, but I had no proof. I had always trusted Marcel. He had been steady, loving, devoted. But now, in this moment, I felt a ripple of doubt I couldn't shake. I sank onto the edge of the sofa, keeping my eyes on them without letting them see me. The trembling teacup caught my attention again, and I thought about how instinct works, how it notices the slightest shift, the quiet signal before the storm. My heart hammered in my chest, each beat echoing like a warning drum. Even without words, I knew something had changed, something I had never anticipated. My mind raced, trying to piece together what I had seen, what it might mean. Instinct has a way of knowing before the evidence appears, and right then, mine screamed that betrayal was near, even if I couldn't yet name it. The phone felt heavy in my hand, like it carried all the weight of the world. Miss Vanna's voice was low, trembling, almost swallowed by the static on the line. Mrs. Hart, please listen carefully. You need to come to the school. Now, don't tell Marcel. Don't tell anyone. It's dangerous. I froze, my heart skipping, then racing uncontrollably. 2 hours ago, I had buried Samuel. I thought grief had already broken me. But now, a new fear clawed at my chest, sharp and urgent. I couldn't ignore it. Every instinct told me this wasn't just a call. It was a warning. What is it? I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. I can't explain over the phone, she said, almost a whisper. You have to see it yourself. Wait for me in the teacher's lounge. Please, hurry. Outside, The rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, blurring the streetlights into smeared orbs of yellow and orange. The sound of the drops hitting the window pane mixed with the ticking clock in the living room, making the silence feel alive, almost pressing against my ears. I pressed the phone closer, staring at the curtains moving in the wind, trying to steady my shaking hands. Fear was spreading, but so was determination. Miss Vanna's words carried urgency, a weight that demanded action. Every second I waited felt like it stretched into an eternity, each tick of the clock echoing like a warning drum. I realized then that listening, really listening, could be the first step to survival. Not anger, not confrontation, not waiting for proof. Listening. Feeling the warning in her voice. Understanding that some dangers reveal themselves only when you pay attention to the quiet signals. I swallowed, pressed the phone to my chest for a moment, and took a deep, shaky breath. The rain pattered against the windows like a rhythm I had to follow, guiding me toward a choice I could not postpone. One step, one moment, and then I would know the truth. I parked my car a few blocks from the school, under the shadow of a large oak. The rain had slowed, leaving the asphalt shiny and slick, reflecting the dim glow of streetlights. My hands were still trembling, my chest tight, but I forced myself out of the car. Each step toward the building felt heavier than the last, as if the wet air itself was trying to hold me back. The school loomed ahead, empty and silent. The front gate hung slightly ajar, swaying with the wind. No guards, no students, no lights except for the flicker of a few fluorescent bulbs in the distant hallways. Shadows stretched long and crooked across the walls, reaching toward me like dark fingers. My pulse pounded in my ears, and every instinct screamed to turn back. But I couldn't. I had to know. I gripped the strap of my bag tighter, feeling the wet fabric bite into my shoulder. The hallways smelled faintly of rain and old floors, a mixture of damp cement and waxed tiles. Each echo of my footsteps bounced off the walls, louder than it should have been. I kept my eyes on the ground, then the ceiling, then the walls, scanning for anything that seemed out of place. A distant hum from the fluorescent lights made the silence feel heavier, almost alive. I thought about Samuel, about Miss Vanna's urgent words, and about the sense of warning I could not ignore. Fear pressed against me, cold and sharp, but determination pushed back just as strong, one step, then another. I reminded myself that courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it. I paused for a moment at the first intersection of hallways, looking toward the staircase that led to the second floor. Shadows pooled there, darker than the rest of the hall. My fingers brushed the railing, cold and smooth. I took a deep breath and began to climb, each step measured, steady, even though my knees felt weak. The school was quiet, but my mind was loud. I knew that each second brought me closer to the truth, closer to danger, and closer to the answers I desperately needed. I reached the top of the stairs, my breath shallow, the echo of each step bouncing off the walls. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the tall windows. I could see a thin line of light slipping out from under the teacher's lounge door. It was small, almost insignificant, but my stomach tightened at the sight. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to turn around, to run back into the safety of the empty hall. But I couldn't. The line of light felt like a door into a secret I had to uncover, even if it frightened me to my core. I moved slowly, one foot in front of the other, trying not to make a sound. The wooden floor creaked beneath my weight, and each small squeak made my heart jump violently. I pressed my back against the wall, peering around the corner. The lounge door was just slightly open, but the shadows inside seemed to reach out, curling into the hallway like dark smoke. A faint draft blew through the crack under the door, carrying the smell of old papers, chalk dust, and something else. Something that made the back of my neck prickle. My hand hovered near the door handle, cold sweat making my fingers slippery. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and irregular in the stillness, and the low hum of a fluorescent light flickering inside the room. I paused, trying to steady myself, remembering Miss Vanna's voice on the phone. Urgent, fearful, pleading. I reminded myself that fear often waits just beyond the threshold, that courage is measured in moments like this. Slowly, carefully, I reached for the handle. My fingers grazed the metal, cold and smooth, and I felt a jolt of panic. The light spilling from the lounge seemed brighter, almost accusing, and the shadows moved as if alive. I took a deep breath, trying to push down the terror coiling in my chest. Then, with a final steadying exhale, I pushed the door open just enough to slip inside, heart pounding, eyes wide, ready for whatever truth awaited me beyond that threshold. I sank to the floor, clutching Samuel's notes, letting the papers spread across my lap. The room smelled faintly of rain and old wood, mingling with the lingering scent of lilies. My eyes fell on a small toy car Samuel had left on the desk, a bright red thing with chipped paint. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it seemed to carry the weight of every memory I had tried to bury. I picked it up, turning it slowly in my hands. I remembered how he used to race it across the floor, laughing until he fell over, his energy filling every corner of the house. Then flashes came, his sudden fatigue, the small complaints he had whispered but never repeated, the afternoons he had fallen asleep unexpectedly, the stomach aches I had dismissed as minor, the anger Marcel had shown when I questioned the doctor's advice. All of it rushed back, one by one, sharp and undeniable. A note slipped out from the pile, scribbled in Samuel's childish hand. He had written questions, concerns, little observations about Marcel, about school, about things that had seemed unimportant at the time. But now, under the dim light and the flicker of the single fluorescent bulb, everything made sense in a painful, heart-wrenching way. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each sound hammering the truth into me. Every tick echoed in my chest like a reminder of what I had missed, what I had ignored, what had quietly built up over months. My guilt swelled, and regret settled in like a heavy fog. I pressed the toy to my chest, tears sliding down my cheeks. The past, which I had tried to forget in my grief, was suddenly screaming its story. It explained the unease I had felt, the warning signals I had ignored, the small pieces of a puzzle I had never fit together. I realized then that understanding the past was the only way to make sense of the present. Each memory, each forgotten detail, was a thread leading me closer to the truth. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt a clarity sharp enough to cut through my sorrow. I stood up, holding Samuel's notes tightly, ready to demand answers. My voice felt heavy in my throat, but I could almost hear the words forming. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you protect him?" I took a slow step toward Marcel, my heart pounding, each beat echoing in the silent lounge. But as I approached, he stepped back, retreating quietly into the shadows. His eyes avoided mine. He didn't speak, didn't reach out, didn't explain. He simply let me stand there, trembling, holding the truth in my hands, while he slipped away into the corner of the room. Outside, rain tapped against the windows, each drop a soft, persistent drumbeat that matched the tension coiling in my chest. The hum of the fluorescent light flickering above made the shadows dance, stretching the silence even longer. I felt my pulse quicken, the anger rising alongside the ache of betrayal. I wanted to shout, to make him see me, to make him confront the reality I now faced. But there was nothing to do. He had chosen silence. He had chosen to retreat when I needed him most. In that moment, I understood something painfully simple. True character shows in absence, not words. I sank back into the chair near Samuel's desk, gripping the notes as if they were the only anchor in a storm. The shadows seemed heavier now, pressing against the walls, pressing against me, reminding me that I could not rely on anyone else to fight for the truth. The rain continued its quiet rhythm, and I realized that the confrontation I had hoped for would never happen. There would be no explanation, no apology, no shared grief to ease the burden. I was on my own, and in that silence, amidst the tapping of rain and the shadows stretching across the lounge, I felt something harden inside me, a determination to uncover the truth myself, no matter the cost, no matter the danger waiting outside that quiet, dimly lit room. I sat down on the edge of Samuel's desk, the notes clutched tightly in my hands. My chest was heavy, my thoughts racing, but I knew what I had to do. Miss Vanna's warning echoed in my mind. Don't tell anyone, it's dangerous. The weight of that responsibility pressed on me, but for the first time in hours, a small spark of control flickered inside. I reached for my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. Shadows from the dim lamp on the desk stretched across my face, splitting me in half between fear and determination. My hands trembled slightly, but I forced them to steady. I had to make this call. It was the only way forward. I dialed the number I had memorized, the one Miss Vanna had given me, in a whisper. Each ring sounded impossibly loud in the silence of the empty lounge. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, but I forced myself to breathe evenly, counting each inhale, each exhale. Finally, a voice answered, a calm, familiar voice that promised discretion and action. I explained what I had found, the notes, the hidden truths, the sense of danger I could not ignore. I spoke quickly but clearly, my fear tempered by purpose. On the other end, there was a pause, then quiet acknowledgement. Instructions followed, precise and careful. They would act, but only if I followed every step exactly. I nodded, even though they could not see me. One choice, one decision, and everything could change. As I hung up, the shadows on my face seemed to shift, as if the room itself recognized the change inside me. I no longer felt like a helpless mother trapped by grief. I felt quiet, controlled power rising, a determination to protect the truth, to uncover what had been hidden, to honor Samuel in the only way I could. One call, one act. And the path forward, dangerous though it might be, was finally mine to walk. The next moments felt unreal, as if the world had slowed to a deliberate crawl. I returned to the lounge, clutching Samuel's notes, and laid them on the desk. The wind outside rattled the blinds, sending streaks of shadow dancing across the floor. Each flicker made my heart jump, but I couldn't look away. I began sorting through the papers, carefully, methodically. Hidden among homework assignments and scribbled drawings were letters, confessions, messages that had never reached me until now. Whispers of truth from Samuel, carefully tucked away, stared me in the face. Names, dates, small details that suddenly connected into a picture I had been too afraid or too blind to see before. As I read, a cold shock ran through me. Pieces of conversations, moments I had dismissed, actions I had ignored, all of them pointed to something I had never imagined. My chest tightened, my stomach lurched, but in the same breath, a strange sense of clarity settled in. The confusion, the fear, the endless questions, they all had answers now, written in Samuel's careful hand. The blinds rattled again, and the faint hum of the fluorescent light above seemed louder. The shadows shifted, wrapping the room in tension, but I no longer flinched. Each revelation was a key, unlocking the darkness I had been stumbling through. I felt grief, yes, but also validation, proof that my instincts, my doubts, had not been wrong. I sank into the chair, letting the papers rest in my lap. I could feel the weight of the truth pressing down, but it was a weight I could carry. Clarity comes only after facing darkness, and in that moment, I understood what Samuel had been trying to tell me, what Miss Vanna had tried to warn me about, and what Marcel had refused to admit. The wind rattled the blinds again, and I let out a long breath. I had the truth now, raw and undeniable. Nothing would ever be the same. But at least now I could see. And seeing was the first step toward justice, toward understanding, toward moving forward. I didn't shout. I didn't storm into the room or confront Marcel with anger. I didn't need to. True power, I realized, was quiet, deliberate, and patient. I moved slowly, each gesture controlled, each action precise. The papers from Samuel's drawer had shown me the truth. Now, it was time for consequences, but on my terms. A small flickering candle on the desk cast shadows across the lounge, dancing in rhythm with my thoughts. I placed the notes carefully into an envelope, sealing it with deliberate care. Each movement was measured, a ritual of quiet victory. Outside, the night was still. The rain long stopped, leaving a wet silence that felt like a witness to everything I was doing. I made a few phone calls, careful ones, each word chosen with care. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I simply presented the facts, the hidden truths Samuel had recorded, the small betrayals, the danger ignored, the lies left unspoken. Each call carried weight, not because I raised my voice, but because I had proof, clarity, and determination behind it. Back in the lounge, I lit another candle, just to watch the small flame burn steadily, unmoving despite the shadows flickering around it. It reminded me of myself, quiet, steady, and unyielding. The calm I felt was strange after so many hours of grief and fear, but it was earned. It was my strength. I knew that the actions I had taken that night would ripple outward, that the truth would reach those who needed to see it. I didn't need recognition. I didn't need applause. The knowledge that I had protected Samuel's memory, uncovered the lies, and acted when it mattered was enough. Real power is quiet, not loud. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand attention. It moves silently, decisively, and leaves a mark that cannot be ignored. As I watched the candle flicker, I felt a small weight lift from my chest. The grief was still there, sharp and raw, but so was a new clarity, an understanding that I had acted, and in that, I had found my own form of justice. The house was quiet again, but the silence was different now. It wasn't heavy with fear or betrayal. It carried the faint scent of lilies from Samuel's funeral and the lingering aroma of rain from earlier. I walked slowly through the empty rooms, my steps careful, deliberate, as if each one might awaken memories I wasn't ready to face. On the kitchen table, a teacup trembled slightly from a draft sneaking through the cracked window. I reached out and steadied it, my fingers brushing the porcelain gently. Its fragility mirrored my own, still delicate after everything I had endured, still shaking after hours of shock, fear, and grief. I wandered to Samuel's room, now quiet, too quiet. The sunlight slanted softly through the blinds, casting lines across the floor where his toys still lay, scattered as if he might return at any moment. I knelt beside them, touching the small red car I had held days before, letting memories wash over me, his laughter, his questions, his small hands grasping mine. A sharp ache rose in my chest, but there was also a strange sense of acceptance. The grief hadn't left. It lingered in every corner, in every object, in every quiet breath I drew. But for the first time, it felt like something I could hold without being crushed by it. I could carry it, move through it, and begin to understand it. I poured myself a cup of tea, the warmth grounding me. As I sipped, I thought about the events of the past hours, the secret calls, the revelations, the betrayal, the quiet justice I had enacted. Tears slid down my cheeks, not from panic or rage, but from a mixture of sorrow and clarity. Healing starts when sorrow is embraced, I realized, not ignored, not hidden away, not denied, but acknowledged, faced, and allowed to flow through, like the rain that had washed the streets outside. I set the teacup down, watching it settle calmly on the table, and felt, for the first time in days, a flicker of peace amid the grief. The evening was quiet, almost too still. A single lamp cast a soft golden glow across the living room, and the curtains moved gently in the breeze from the open window. I sat in my favorite chair, Samuel's notes folded neatly on the table beside me, and allowed myself to breathe slowly for the first time in hours. I thought about Marcel, about the silence, about the moments when he had failed to act. The hurt was still there, sharp and undeniable, but now it was mixed with something else, an attempt to understand. People are fragile, imperfect, capable of mistakes, and sometimes the ones closest to us falter when it matters most. That didn't excuse what happened, but it explained it in a way my anger alone never could. I thought about the quiet power I had discovered within myself, the patience, the determination, the careful steps I had taken to uncover the truth and protect Samuel's memory. In the reflection of the lamp on the wooden floor, I saw both my vulnerability and my resilience. Shadows flickered and stretched across the walls, like reminders of the pain and the lessons it had brought. Regret still lingered, for lost time, for the moments I hadn't noticed, for the small warnings I hadn't heeded, but so did a sense of forgiveness. Not for him entirely, not for everything, but for the human flaws that allowed fear, selfishness, and silence to creep in. I realized that holding on to bitterness alone would not help me, would not honor Samuel's memory, and would not allow me to move forward. Insight comes from reflection, not judgment. And in that quiet room, with the soft lamp glow and the curtains swaying gently, I felt a shift inside me. I could see clearly, think clearly, and perhaps slowly begin to heal. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the evening surround me, the warmth, the calm, the lingering sorrow, and accepted that understanding was its own kind of strength, a gentle power that did not shout, but quietly carried me through the night. I stood by the window, watching the streets glisten with rain, the reflections of streetlights stretching across the asphalt like liquid gold. A cold breeze drifted in, carrying the faint smell of wet earth and the distant city beyond. My hands rested lightly on the sill, and for the first time in days, I felt the tension in my chest loosen, just a little. Everything that had happened, the shock, the grief, the betrayal, the hidden truths, was still there, lingering like shadows in the corners of my mind. But now, with the rain streaking the city below and the soft hum of life continuing outside, I could see the path forward. I had faced the darkness. I had uncovered the secrets. I had acted when it mattered most, and in doing so, I had discovered something I didn't know I had: strength, quiet and unyielding, born from love and grief alike. The ocean wind, or maybe just the way the city carried its distant tides, whistled softly past the window. I could almost hear Samuel's laughter mixing with it, a reminder of the joy that had once filled our home and the light I wanted to carry with me. I drew a deep breath, letting it fill my lungs and settle the storm inside. I realized that life's hardest trials do not break us completely. They reveal hidden strength, resilience we never knew existed, and courage we must call upon in moments we hope will never come. My grief was still real, my sorrow still sharp, but I felt a quiet dignity returning, a gentle hope that the future could still hold something bright. I straightened, letting the cool air brush my face, and whispered to myself, "This is why I survived. This is why I stood." I knew that whatever came next, I would meet it with the same quiet courage I had found in the shadows, in the rain, in the small moments of choice that had defined these days. And as the city lights shimmered like tiny stars on the wet streets, I understood the strength that had carried me here would carry me forward, always.